Good evening, Francis.
Hi, John. How are you? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, good. If you couldn't, I'd yell a little louder from North Carolina.
Peter has a work assignment tonight, so he's not going to be able to host this, so I'm filling in for him.
Oh, okay. Okay.
How's everything in North Carolina?
Oh, pretty good. Just getting ready, watching the progress of this tropical storm / hurricane. See what happens. But
I just finished my SABR bio of Miles Wolff.
oh, you did?
And submitted it.
Yeah.
What an interesting career he had.
Yeah,
he has had.
Yeah.
Thomas, good evening.
Hi, Thomas.
Good evening from Toledo, Ohio.
So, yes. Thomas, I thought I'd let you know, update on my Tiger 1963 yearbook situation.
Yes, give me an update.
Just this morning, I pulled it out and I tried to identify what I was missing besides the K-line page, the picture of K-line.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently it's the Tigers coaches.
Oh.
That must have been the other side of somebody neatly tore that page out of that yearbook, which doesn't bother me a great deal. I still got a great buy on it years ago, but K-line was missing. And then, you helped me identify it. At least you said that you had a yearbook that had him in it. But I think it must have been the coaches were on the opposite side of that page.
Well, here's a little tidbit. I don't know if it's ever happened before, but the Detroit Tigers lost 2 coaches this month to the ranks of colleges. Cruz Jr. left for Rice, and he was assistant batting coach. And the third base coach, Chip Hale, left for Arizona.
Yeah, I saw that was just last night or yesterday.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think that's ever happened before.
No.
Thomas, my daughter got married in Toledo, St. Bridget's Church downtown.
Which church?
St. Bridget's, is that an Irish church? It has shamrocks in the
Oh, St. Patrick's. St.
Patrick's. Okay.
Yeah, historical St. Patrick's.
Historical, yes. Yeah, she got married. Her husband's from Toledo.
Yes.
They live in Chicago now.
All right. That's been designated the Firefighters Church.
The Firefighters Church.
Yes, they do. Each spring, they do a mass to honor the firefighters.
Okay.
Who currently serve and who've passed, and it's quite a spectacular occasion with the bagpipes and a parade. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I got to make sure I remember admitting these folks.
Yeah. What's your if you don't mind, what's your son-in-law and your daughter's last name?
Halfors. Ahlfors.
Halfors.
He worked for Owens Corning.
Okay. All right.
And we went to Jamie Farr's place when we were out.
Oh,
there.
Tony Pacos?
Yeah.
Tony, yeah. He celebrated birthday number 87.
Is that right?
Yeah, so I guess he's a super senior. Yeah. This plaque behind me has just been erected, and it's I don't know.
Okay.
All right. It's most towns have some type of historical society. This is somewhat of the Negro Historical Society. So they established a plaque near the downtown area, near 475.
Okay.
And honors the black, the Negro teams who played in Toledo.
Okay. I'm awaiting our speaker.
Oh.
Tony Oliver. He's going to talk to us about baseball tickets. He's got a project associated with SABR.
Sorry for that. That must have been another one of my fans or somebody wanting to sell me a car warranty. I'm gonna run upstairs and get this glass of water I left up there. I'll be right back, guys.
Bye.
Somewhat nerve-wracking when your guest speaker is tardy, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I might try to go and go to the SABR database and see if I can get his phone number. Okay, I'm gonna step out for a second.
Okay.
Entertain ourselves here.
Yeah. Thomas, I feel like maybe the Tigers are making a little improvement this year. What do you think?
Yes, I agree. Right now it seems like the hitting, the defense, starting pitching, and relief pitching are all coming together.
Yeah.
You know, it seems like that's an issue that all teams have. They hope and pray for this day, and then little by little, something on the cart gets a little wobbly.
Yeah.
But they finally have a decent infield. They have this player called Zach Short.
Yeah, he's been hitting the ball.
Yeah, he doesn't have much of an offensive, golf bag, but defensively, he might solidify the infield.
Mm-hmm.
And
He did hit a couple of home runs last.
yeah, he hit a home run in the Texas series, and I think he was maybe 1 for 10 or 1 for 11, and that was his only hit.
Yeah. Oh, was it?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. But he's pretty good with the glove, and I think the Tigers under Hinch, they've been playing the roulette wheel with shortstop. So he
It's
might
not that
be.
they're playing better, I think. It's not that they're setting the world on fire, but compared to other years, recent years, I think they're doing pretty well.
Well, they're rookie pitchers, Screwball, Manning. They've come in and they've been able to hold their own.
Yeah.
I
just hope
yesterday they were 10-5, but that's one game.
Yeah. I'm just hoping they don't turn around and have a terrible August or the rest of June. If they can keep the momentum going for.
Yeah, they're I think 8 games under 500.
Something like that.
So that would really be remarkable if they could reach 500 and put a little more heat on Cleveland.
Yeah.
And Cleveland seems to be going in the opposite direction. They are really smitten with injuries.
Yeah.
He's here. Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
You tracked him down, huh?
Well, no, he jumped in.
Okay, good.
I got his phone number and I was going to call him in case.
You must have done this moderating before.
Tony's
here. Sorry, I was on the waiting room.
Yeah, and I went. Yeah, I saw you.
No worries.
Okay. So you're gonna talking about baseball tickets tonight. I'm John Burbridge.
Nice to meet you, John.
Peter is got a work assignment tonight, so he's not going to be able to. He might actually be joining us, but I'm hosting. Okay.
Excellent.
And so let me just give you a brief introduction. I understand you're a project manager. You got an interesting project for SABR.
I sure do.
And
Well,
that
I have
is-
several.
And that is you're accumulating baseball tickets, and a guy's going to display them. And you're looking for the cooperation of a lot of SABR members to do this, help with this.
Absolutely.
And you're from Folsom, California, and a member of the Sacramento SABR chapter.
I am.
Okay, take it away.
Alrighty. So I'm
Thank
going to
you.
share my screen in a minute. I'm going to share something. Thanks everyone for being here. I have a very short presentation and then mostly Q&A. So let me know if you can see the presentation. There should be a baseball on the grass.
Not yet.
No,
Not yet. Not yet, Tony.
Alrighty.
It just says Antonio Oliver has started screen sharing.
Alrighty. Well, we'll come in a minute. So this project that I'm working on came to my mind a few years back, and I've just been putting it in my back pocket as I do a whole bunch of other baseball related activities. I have been working on a handful of bios, both for book publications as well as those that are not for book publications. And I have also been working on some other elements for my own analysis, just for my own baseball interest. In addition to, of course, like John mentioned, I'm a project manager. That's my day job. And I also teach at UC Davis, and I have a wife and daughter. So all of this keeps me busy.
Your slide has just appeared.
Excellent. Excellent. So the title of the research and the title of the project is tentative, but we're gearing towards something like, hey, that's the ticket, tracing the evolution of baseball admission tickets. All right. So to give you a little bit of a glimpse as to how this began. So I started researching this on my own back in 2019, which seems like many, many years ago nowadays. And then in 2020, after having some initial discussions with some folks and some collectors, I reached out to SABR during the idea submission period for research projects and submitted it as something for them to consider. It was approved shortly thereafter for a 2022 target. So this is not something that we're doing for 2021, but instead for 2022. And if any of you have worked on a SABR publication, you know that one, it's a lot of work, but two, there's a lot of different projects and a lot of different publications happening simultaneously. Ultimately, they are released in accordance to the level of readiness. I have learned that myself by contributing to several of the books that Bill Nowlin is editing. I've written for a couple that have already been published. One on the 1995 Atlanta Braves, one on the greatest comeback games, and one that should be published soon on the 1942 Monarchs. But that being said, I have also provided a lot of other material for books that are still in the works. One on Venezuelans, one on one-hit wonders, and a couple of others. So in 2021, I've been devoting my time, and you see that in the first half, to a call for volunteers. And this is how I latched on to this conversation. I put something both on the SABR L District newsletter, as well as in the SABR This Week communication, to talk about the project itself, to communicate it to folks who might be interested. And at the end of the presentation, I'll talk about ways in which you can get involved if you were so inclined. And I put a call for volunteers, and about 10 of them are currently working with me in terms of providing ideas, providing content, all that kind of good stuff. We're still researching this. We'll probably research this forever because it's such a topic that is evergreen. Not only do we still need tickets, although of course nowadays they tend to be mostly electronic, but also there's a wealth of material out there accumulated. If you think of the number of tickets that have existed for every single game that has been played, and then you multiply it by the number of seats, it's quite the collection of information to go through. I would like to devote the better half of, or the second half of this year to researching and editing. But of course, I'm still very much interested in volunteers, and I'm interested in getting more information out there. And I'm hopeful that we can meet the 2022 publication. And I say hopeful because the traditional SABR publication is a book that is also available as an ebook. For this, I'm envisioning something different. I'm envisioning the electronic version first. I'm envisioning a portion of the SABR website that serves as a blog, much like the Baseball Cards Committee is currently doing, and talk about our research and talk about what we have found. And in addition to that, perhaps publish a a complementary book on the topic that wouldn't have all of the information, but rather perhaps selections. An ideal scenario would be a coffee table book. I know that that's a little too lofty, but who knows? Maybe we do find enough stuff that we can get to it. Stop me at any point, by the way, if you have questions. So the proposal that I submitted really covered three main things, which was the history of tickets, stories of people who collect tickets or have kept tickets, and lastly, the future. What does the future hold for tickets in terms of the evolution of the memorabilia, the evolution of how we get into physically into a ball game, and also how baseball is perhaps trying to push more memorabilia and more items in lieu of some of the things that we have come to know and love, like a printed program or perhaps a pennant or something along those lines. I like to start with a history. What prompted me in this voyage is I read the two wonderful books by Peter Morris, The Game on the Field and The Game Off the Field, in which he and his researchers trace the evolution of all aspects of the game back to its origins. So if you haven't read those books, I highly recommend them. They'll take you through, for instance, the first time that peanuts were sold at a baseball game, or when did the word pennant first come about. As I was reading those, I noticed that there was a very brief mention of tickets. There was the mention of this is the first known time in which tickets were used, and that was it. So it led me to wonder, well, there's probably a lot of stuff that we can dig into here, both in terms of how the tickets came about and also how the tickets evolved. Particularly given that baseball fans like ourselves, we love to collect things and we love to keep things. And that is really a passport to where, yeah, it's really a passport to that game that lives in our memory, but also nowadays, thanks to YouTube and thanks to Yet Retro Sheet and all these different things, we can relive in many different ways. So the first part of the research is focus on the history. When did specific items of a ticket first show up? So for example, when was the first ticket printed in two colors come about? When did the tickets first include tax information? When did tickets first include the location of the seat, or perhaps the location of the gate through which you had to come in, or perhaps an image of a player, a drawing, etc., etc. Thus far, that meaning the group of researchers and myself, we have come up with about 100 different things that we're wishing to track. And as you can imagine, all of these take time. So we're going one at a time based on their own particular interests. The second thing is stories. So here I want to reach out to baseball fans who have kept tickets and why they have done so. Is it because the games have a sentimental reason or a sentimental meaning to them? Obviously, the games are wonderful, but was there something that happened that game that perhaps prompted you to keep that ticket? Maybe it was the first time you went with your parents, or the first time with your children, or maybe when you met your wife, or maybe it was the no-hitter. So I want to capture as many of those conversations, and to that end, I've been reaching out to folks via Facebook and via these SABR meetings for each chapter to ask their questions and get their knowledge. There's the folks who keep the tickets of the games they went to, and there's also the folks who don't just keep the tickets of the game they went to, but also procure tickets of games they didn't go to. So for example, if you're a fan of Chipper Jones, you might want to get a ticket from all of the games in which Chipper Jones hit a home run. Or there's a gentleman in Cleveland who has a collection of opening day tickets for the Cleveland Indians franchise. So it's that kind of stuff that I also want to capture, because I realize that all collectors to a certain degree are obsessive. And I think baseball ones even more so. I know that I am. And I would love to get the perspective of what prompted them on that voyage. And by the way, is that their own Moby Dick? Or is there something that they keep on doing? And maybe they did it for one player and they finished that collection. Now they're doing it for another player. And lastly, I want to take a look at the future. So I'm a big believer in technology, but I do also believe in nostalgia. And the fact of the matter is that the electronic ticket brings a fair amount of satisfaction, brings a fair amount of ease. I can understand the perspective from the clubs, because it allows them to keep inventory without it allows them not to have to keep inventory and sell those items relatively quickly. It also makes transactions a little bit faster. It also brings about the element of knowing where folks are in the stadium, which is important to them, as we've learned, not just for reasons of wanting to know where the patrons are and what to sell them, but also for safety reasons, as the case may be. But that being said, we stand at the precipice of losing something that is very important, which is that gorgeous piece of paper that tells a tale. It's not quite the same when it's on your phone. It's not quite the same when it's not physical. And granted, in some cases, you can still print it if you would by going to your computer and printing it, but it's not the same. It's not as pretty. It's not as beautiful. So to that end, I've been looking at how other industries are moving to this and what are they losing, what are they gaining. And within sports, I'm talking to a handful of the franchises to get to know a little bit more about their rationale and what has changed from their perspective by doing so. I've met with the Pirates as well as with the Giants on that. The topics, as I mentioned, we have come up, I should say, not across, about 100 different ones. So anything from the first game at a stadium, or the first time the stadium name is listed on the ticket, or perhaps the first time the Twitter feed was printed there, or the first time that, let's see, a ticket with radio credentials or TV credentials or newspaper credentials was issued. Because baseball has such a wonderful history, and by the way, we're talking Major League Baseball here. Once we start adding the minors, and when we start adding amateur leagues, and when we start adding college, and once we start adding foreign leagues, it the volume explodes even further. But we're taking a measured approach by first identifying all those things that we want to do, so that we have a ready-made pile of topics for us to go as the researchers at any given point in time. I've requested to the researchers who are helping me out that they pick 2 to 3 topics, so that if they hit a roadblock, or if perhaps they run into a wall, they can't get some more information, they can just as easily pivot and go to another topic from, again, this long list. And lastly, what I wanted to leave with today is I'm looking for contributors. As I mentioned, SABR projects take a proverbial village. They take folks who write, they take folks who research, they take folks who edit. But in this case, they also take folks who are collectors, or perhaps you might know someone who is a collector, or you might know someone who works at one of the franchises. So if you fit into any of these criteria, please drop me a line, because I'd love to talk to you. I'd love to get a sense of, if you're a collector, I'd love to get to understand why you collect, how you started collecting. If you're not a collector, but perhaps you've kept the tickets you've went to because of sentimental reasons, I'd love to understand that. And if you have a particular interest in the topic and wish to research or write or edit, I would love to get a hold of you and add you to my list. And that was it.
Okay. Are you,
I'm going to stop sharing so that my face appears again, and happy to answer any questions.
okay. Anyone have questions? Francis, you always have something to add.
Well, I was thinking of one, and that is, are you, it sounded, but I think your presentation partly answered it. Is your focus on all periods then, all eras, not just going back a great length in time?
So that's a great question. I would say that I I would like to go back, resources permitting, of course, to when tickets first come about. What I have found with this topic is that as we start looking at these tickets, and by the way, sometimes it's as, I don't want to say easy, but sometimes it's as simple as punching it on Major League Baseball tickets on eBay and just sorting through the thousands and thousands of them. We certainly want to go back as far as possible, but rather than structure it as hey, here's a 2-decade period and here's how tickets evolve within that decade, I'm looking to organize it in a way that's perhaps a little bit easier, so highlighting the individual element. Again, in a hypothetical scenario, we could have something like the legal language regarding the protection of the club if a spectator is hit by a ball or a bat. I would love to figure out when did that first originate and what prompted that. So a little bit of the history as well as it occurred in fill in the year. And then how it propagated perhaps from club to club, or if it was the type of thing that the league mandated across. Once I were to have all of that, or once we get to that point, and by the way, again, there's new ideas, there's new topics, there's new elements, then perhaps the printed version would be better organized in decades or eras or the like.
Funny that you mentioned the legal issue.
Yeah.
I'm going back to, this is a while, we're going to the Polo Grounds.
Uh-huh.
$1.25 general admission ticket. My father would get a bunch of them and we'd go in and watch the game. But I remember looking at these tickets in the National Exhibition Club,
Uh-huh.
and basically on the back was all this legal mumbo jumbo.
Yep.
And for me, 12 years old, but I still remember that. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Do they still have that today on the back of tickets?
Yeah, they do to a certain degree, right? It's almost like I chuckle when once during a telecast the announcers rattle off the unauthorized broadcast without the expression written consent of Major League Baseball, blah 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 blah, because we've heard it so many times that it rolls off the tongue to a certain degree. So yes, there is that. I wonder if I'd have to check on the legal implications if it's the type of thing that if it must be printed on the ticket, or if perhaps nowadays when we move to electronic tickets and you're presented with the terms and conditions, if perhaps that were to satisfy the requirement. But that's a good question. That's a good question. See, that's the type of stuff that we're looking to decipher, because as with any good researcher, as with any good analyst, you find the answer to your question and you come up with 10 other questions.
The one thing that enters my mind, because frankly, I don't pay as much attention to tickets now that they're not something you can hold in your hand, but have you found or determined whether all the major league teams moved to electronic ticketing at the same time, or were some well ahead of others?
What I have found thus far is that some were ahead of others. Now, the devil's in the details when mentioning electronics. So in 2020, they all moved, to the best of my knowledge, in 2020, they all did not obviously need tickets, although at the beginning of the season they were still planning on it until it was clear that no fans could be present in the stands. We know that in the off season there were tickets for games in Arlington. I haven't checked on those yet. Um, I I live in Sacramento. I've lived in Sacramento for 17 years. Prior to Sacramento, I lived in North Carolina for 2. Prior to that, I lived in San Francisco for 2. And prior to that, I lived in Washington, D.C., when I attended college. I I remember electronic ticketing being feasible when I was in San Francisco in 2000 and 2001. It wasn't prevalent, but even then, the ticketing was more of you buy the ticket and you print a piece of paper. It wasn't certainly what we have today, which is the actual physical ticket it's on its way out, and the ticket that resides in your phone is smart. Is smart in the sense that you can't scan it more than twice. It's smart in the sense that it can also store concession values and all these different things. So it didn't occur all at once, that's for sure. As with Major League Baseball, because certainly we know that the entity as such has a lot of control over the clubs. There were some items in which things are more mandated than recommended or suggested. And pre-pandemic in 2018, I met with some friends of mine in Houston to watch a couple games. We just wanted to meet up somewhere. We all live in different places, so we said let's go meet somewhere we've never been. So we went to Houston. I remember at the beginning of the season, it took an act of God to get those tickets because the Major League Baseball app recognized that I lived in Sacramento, recognized that I had attended games at San Francisco and Oakland. That was my home market, and I had purchased those, and it wouldn't let me buy tickets for Houston. So there were those snafus that I think nowadays are no longer there, but it's growing pains that occur both when you allow the franchises to act individually, as well as when you, as a governing entity, you try to mandate the franchises to act accordingly without necessarily contemplating the what if scenarios.
Why did it not allow you to buy a ticket? Because you lived out in San
It
Francisco?
for some reason, and there's elements about it might have been coded incorrectly, right? That is the clearest explanation. There's also elements, and I know that the Giants do this. They open up the ticket window to season ticket holders or to other folks ahead of others. So I know that was the case this year with the pandemic. The Giants, when some teams started selling tickets, and of course, limited amount, I was able to buy Ace tickets, but I was not able to buy Giants tickets. The Giants tickets were saying, "Hey, we'll put you on a wait list." So it could have been that perhaps I was trying to do it during spring training, and the Houston franchise was not yet opening outside of its market because they wanted folks to have first crack. Could be that.
Yeah. Now,
I'll have to look back at my notes, but I recall having to call the Houston ticket office and
yes.
doing it over the phone.
Now, tier pricing, my
Yeah.
recollection, of course, I live in North Carolina, don't go to a whole lot of major league games, though try to go to as many as possible. First time I recall tier pricing was at RFK Stadium in Washington
Mm-hmm.
when the Senators were still playing there after coming from Montreal, or the Nationals that were playing there. And that was the first time I aware of tier pricing. Did tier pricing was it staggered as far as you know in its introduction, or did it come in more or less same time? Because now I think about every team has it.
It did stagger. I don't have these specifics because we're still researching it, but it's one of the interesting ways to define, right? You could take a look at tiering. by virtue of the fact that, hey, once upon a time you had bleachers and reserved, and then we started adding more sections of the ballpark. And then from there, it moved to, hey, maybe you were charged more for a Saturday game than a Monday game. So those were the elements that were seen as commonly approved. And those were the ones that did not need technology, right? It was a type of thing that you could even print the tickets in different colors and then they would know. It wasn't until, and the example par excellence of this is obviously the airline industry that has been able to really, after deregulation, make a lot of different, run a whole bunch of different variables to determine how to sell those tickets and in what sense. So I have not yet found that, but certainly it is something that every team does to a certain degree. I reckon that some teams are more aggressive, and by that I mean that they are constantly tweaking their algorithms versus those that perhaps do it by set and true standards. At the beginning of the season, they'll say, okay, we're going to charge more when the Yankees are in town or the Dodgers are in town, and they just leave it at that. The technology, of course, has allowed us to get to the point where, hey, maybe a good pitcher is coming to town. You wouldn't know that ahead of time, right? You have to take a look at the rotation, or perhaps somebody is riding a hitting streak or something like that. I don't know who started that, but I'm itching to learn.
Do any minor league teams, to your knowledge, use tier pricing? I wouldn't think it'd be as successful there.
Great question. I don't think anyone does. No. I know my minor league team here is Sacramento River Cats. They don't. They have different ticket pricing per day, but not otherwise.
How about for various promotions, particularly Friday, Saturday, maybe a bobblehead type thing?
Yes, that tends to be the case. And there's a couple different promotions that I've come across. One is the first X number of fans to enter through the turnstiles get X, Y, and Z. And there's also the others which include, I don't want to call it value add, but include additional elements that you could buy for that particular instance. In 2019, with my same friends, we went to San Diego. And it just so happened that it was the day that they were giving out the replica jerseys for Hoffman and for Gwynn. So there, the Padres had planned for every single person to get one of those. But the particular ticket that I got, the particular ticket package that I got, also gave me a free hat. So that was an interesting element where, of course, they were giving a certain, or putting a certain amount of tickets that also had that additional value at. But I haven't yet got to the point where I'm able to, I don't know who started it. I'm dying to figure it out.
For our local minor league team, the Toledo Mud Hens, they have, it's mostly with bobbleheads. And maybe a jersey or a towel or some other item. So it's commonly, let's say, the first 500 people. And if you don't want to stand in line for 2 or 3 hours at the correct gate to get your freebie, for an additional fee, you can purchase that item.
Very smart that they're able to sell it as well.
Yeah. What's an issue with the local stadium? Let's say there's 500 bobbleheads. And they have 3 entrances to the ballpark. So theoretically, each entrance would have the same number of bobbleheads. Unfortunately, some of the entrances are busier than others. So those busier ones run out quickly, while the slower ones continue to have those bobbleheads.
Absolutely. And yeah, when we think of the types of entrances at the stadiums, that's something that was very common once upon a time. And nowadays, especially with urban ballparks with limited space, you don't have that flexibility. Juxtaposing, for instance, the Giants and the A's. The A stadium is surrounded by parking. The A stadium is connected to rapid transit. So it has at least 4 entrances that I know of. Whereas the Giants, they can make do with 2 if you would, but when it comes to a promotion like that, it causes quite the spillover of fans.
Are you, one last question about
Yeah, of course,
this.
as many as you want.
Um, Are you tracking if a giveaway is given upon the entrance or upon the exit of the stadium?
I haven't yet. I'm sure that there is a case, but I can't recall at least a game that I've attended or that I was aware of where the giveaway was given at the exit.
Okay.
I'm sure the case exists, but I'm trying to remember if I've come across any of those.
Okay.
In
All right.
Greensboro, I got a loaf of bread at the end of a game.
Was it dependent on them reaching a certain amount of runs or something like that?
Oh, they just gave us a loaf of bread on the way out.
All right. All
Some
right.
local baker, I guess, wanted to promote his bakery.
Okay. Because I know that this was a while back, but the A's, I think that there was something about scoring a certain amount of runs or striking out a certain amount of batters in an inning
right.
would get you a free personal pizza.
Right.
So there it was something that was given to you on the way up.
I think Greensboro had a few of those.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a question about the physical ticket.
Yeah.
A couple of weeks ago, I went to an Orioles game and I was using a corporate ticket.
Uh-huh.
And I actually had an individual ticket. Okay. But I remember I was in London a couple of years ago and going to Premier League team,
Uh-huh.
Premier League game, and again having a corporate ticket.
Yeah.
But the ticket was a smart card, which I had to return
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the game to the company so that they could use it. And since the Premier League only plays like every 2 games a week, it's not a big problem. Is there always a physical ticket in a major league game?
No, actually it isn't. And it's kind of surprising because that was counterintuitive to me. I was envisioning it from the perspective that if you are a company and you, regardless of whether you wish to give them to your employees or you wish to take your clients, a physical ticket would make sense because there's the transport, there's the act, if you would, of saying, hey, dear client, here you go. What I learned from specifically the Giants is that while season ticket holders still like that and they can upgrade to get printed tickets, corporations are actually preferring a non-physical ticket. And the case study that I presented is that because it's easier to provide to the employee in that way, you can send them an email with a link. Personally, my perspective, I will tell you, 2 weeks ago, I went with my wife and daughter to the Sacramento River Cats. My employer, VSP, raffled off tickets. The company has 4 season tickets. It used to be printed as of 3 years ago. Now it's completely online. I had to, they emailed them, transfer them, if you would, to my Ticketmaster account, and off I went. So from the perspective of corporations, I think that the larger corporations perhaps are looking at this as a value add because it lessens the tax of actually delivering the tickets.
Right.
I think that the smaller a company might still treasure that act of giving somebody a ticket.
Okay.
I have season basketball tickets for the University of Toledo.
Mhm.
And for the last few years, they've been offering 3 versions. You can have a paper ticket,
Mm-hmm.
You can have a digital ticket,
Mm-hmm.
and you can also have what they call like a credit card
Mm-hmm.
ticket.
Yep.
And it's somewhat, I guess, surprising what people prefer.
Yep.
For example, I have a friend who likes the paper tickets
Mm-hmm.
because he keeps those in his car glove
Mm.
compartment or glove box, for all home games.
I see.
So if he's coming home from work late, he has a ticket, doesn't have to run home. If he's
Interesting.
working late and knows he won't make it, he can offer those tickets easily to somebody else
I
at
see.
work.
Interesting.
Personally, I like the credit card because I can keep it in my wallet.
Yeah. No, I would agree. I think there's a
Yeah,
benefit to it.
yeah,
Yeah. So it's a wonderful topic because not only from putting on the hat of the obsessive baseball fan, there's so many questions. Putting on the hat of somebody who is interested in technology, there's the comparison of why we're doing it this way versus a different way and how it differs with other, not just with other sports leagues, but also with other businesses, right? There's a benefit to it. There's um, I I can definitely tell you that I never mourned the loss of a paper airplane ticket, but I certainly mourn the loss of the baseball
Yeah.
printed ticket. That being said, maybe the memories that I have of a baseball ticket are more equitable, not with a airplane printed ticket, but perhaps with the passport, which is still very much a printed document, right? I keep my old passport so I can look back at, oh yeah, when I went to this country or that country or that country.
I think what's interesting about this little discussion we were having is how this whole thing will evolve.
Hmm.
And I think the more and more you think about it, I guess the paper ticket is going to disappear at some point.
I think I think it will. The question is what will replace it as memorabilia? What will replace it as that element of being in the stadium? And it seems like whenever we go to a Major League Baseball stadium right now, the authenticators are hard at work authenticating every single thing. And I understand if you want to authenticate a player's first hit, or if you want to authenticate the first time, I don't know, a triple play was performed at the stadium or something like that. But it's getting to a ridiculous degree where you authenticate the first time a broken bat was done by the second baseman when he was wearing pink socks. And I think baseball in its thirst, and I understand baseball is a business, but baseball in its thirst of bringing more and more product to satisfy the thirst for collectors might be artificially creating some things while at the same time taking away something that holds universal appeal. Um, I understand there's a lot of elements that go into play. I'm not under any illusion that I'm looking at everything that goes into consideration, but it does say something that season ticket holders are still offered, sometimes at a premium, but they're still offered by many clubs the opportunity to get a paper ticket. I think that that is a testament to the value and to the significance of the ticket in the mind of the fan.
Every once in a while, I see a study
Uh-huh.
that's looking at ticket prices versus inflation or something
Uh-huh.
of that nature. How do they actually come up with an average ticket price that actually? I was curious as to how they do that.
That's a good question. I actually don't know. And I say that for a variety of reasons. First is I think that in any case, if you're looking at the list price, and to your question, if you're looking at the list price of a ticket, nowadays you have to add all the other fees. So are they incorporating them? I don't know. Also, the fact of the matter is there seem to be promotions left and right. And maybe I'm biased because I'm looking at the A's, who obviously struggle to
Yeah.
sell tickets. But it seems, and even in times past, it seems that there's always a way to not pay. I recall in 2017, I was in San Francisco for business overnight, and the Giants and the Reds were playing. The Giants were pretty bad by that time. The Reds were not a great club either. And I monitored the price of the tickets. I saw them dropping. And I did something that I would never do, which I purposely waited until after the beginning of the game. And I went to a scalper. And he was trying to sell me a $50 ticket at face value. And I looked at the person, I said, listen, you've had the upper hand for 20 years, but let's face it, the game has started and the Giants suck. And he was insulted. And I said, oh, sorry, you lost the sale. There was a gentleman nearby who happened to have an extra ticket. His plans with somebody had fallen through, and he sold it to me at a steep discount. And I said, yeah, thank you. It's that type of thing that makes me wonder, how do they consider that? Not to mention that, quite honestly, I think the ticket pricing, and granted, I'm not in New York, I'm not in Chicago, I'm not in LA, I'm not in Boston, but I don't think the problem is the ticket pricing. I think the problem is everything else, right? The $15 beers and everything else. So, yeah. But yeah, it's been wonderful chatting with you guys. I send the questions, keep the questions coming. And if you're interested in the topic, if you have tickets and you wouldn't mind sending me pictures, or if you have an inkling to write or to edit or to research, I would love everyone's help.
How do we contact you?
Yeah, so I'm gonna put my information on the chat, okay?
Right. Okay.
That's my email, and this is my number. And in the SABR directory, you can send me a note. I show up in the directory again with the Sacramento chapter.
Okay. And it's Tony
S.
Tony
for my middle initial.
Diaz.
Oliver Diaz. Yep. All right, folks. Well, I appreciate your time. I know it's a little bit later on the East Coast. I miss the East Coast tremendously. I can't wait to get to DC. It's been at least 5 years since I've been there. And certainly Camden Yards is my favorite park still, even more than Pac Bell. So
How's Joey Bart doing at Sacramento?
He wasn't playing a couple of weeks ago when we were there. He's getting some at bats with the Giants. I think that they were expecting to give him more work since Buster was getting up on age, but Buster has found the fountain of youth, taking a year off as he did, rightfully so. He and his wife had adopted some children. Has rekindled his bat. So him and Belt, of course, catcher and first. So I think they're giving Joey some opportunities. I don't know if they'll re-sign Belt, but maybe that'll be an opportunity for him to crack into the lineup a little bit more.
That's going to be a big issue next year.
Yep.
Crawford, Belt, whether they re-sign him, and looks like Crawford will be back, but I'm not sure about Belt.
Yeah, he's a good player. I think that when he came up, there was more promise, and he has settled more into a Mark Grace style hitter,
Right.
which is not a bad thing to be. But,
I've been a Giants fan since 1947. By the way, we
nice.
had a later arrival, Jeffrey. I don't know if I don't know if I apologize to Jeffrey if I didn't admit him on time, but when I saw he was here, I admitted him. You have anything to say,
Nope.
Jeff?
No problem.
Okay.
No, I'll just listen.
Okay.
Sounds great.
We're wrapping it up now.
Okay, no problem.
Well,
Okay,
thank you. Thanks again for having me, and
thank
feel
you.
free to drop me a note, okay?
Interesting project, Tony, and
Thank you.
open up a new line of thinking here, talking about
Abs-
tickets.
That's the beauty of the game.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you. Take care.
Thank you. Yeah.
Bye.
Okay, and 2 weeks at 12 o'clock PM, and I'm not sure I'm sure you've gotten the information about the various speakers from the Babe Ruth chapter, but that will be the next one at noon in 2 weeks, and that's the middle of the month meeting. And then again, we will have another meeting at the beginning of the month on Wednesday at 7 o'clock, the month of August. Okay, thank you very much for being here, and take care now.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.